I'm Mark from Chicago Flyhouse. Today we're going to look at the proper use of a daisy or a sewn runner. Daisies and sewn runners are really convenient. We see them a lot in different types of temporary rigging application, but you have to load them properly. There's two different ways you can load them. If you're not careful, you might load them the wrong way, which is going to reduce the strength of the daisy or the sewn runner. If you load one side to here and the other side to a loop, any one of these, you'll be pulling in line with the stitching. If you load it from the other loop and you pull it here, you're going to be pulling the stitching out. And what you're going to see is that's going to reduce the capacity greatly from what the tag says from the manufacturer. So when you're using these, you need to be very cautious that when you're making your connections, whether you do it with a basket, whether you do it with a choke, that you're always loading these loops properly. Okay, so what we're going to do to test this is we are going to look at the manufacturer's information on their tags. They have a breaking strength, a minimum breaking strength of 4,000 pounds. I want to remind everybody, minimum breaking strength means when the manufacturer has stitched a bunch of these together and they've tested it, that's the lowest it's ever broken at. So we want to use that low number as our number. We don't want to assume for the few that broke higher. So what we'll do is we'll do our first test. We're going to do the wrong way, which is putting one point of the Break-O-Matic here and the other point in the loop pulling in the opposite way. And if you look at that, you'll naturally see that we're trying to rip the stitches out. In the second version, what we're going to do is we're going to pull from the opposite loop and pull in line so that this stitching is basically in shear. So in the first test, what we did is we loaded it backwards, the wrong way to do it. We pulled from this end loop, one part of the Break-O-Matic, and then we pulled into this loop here, which was basically trying to peel both the bottom and the top part of the stitching. When we did this, at about 1,300 pounds, stitches started breaking. And the stitches that started breaking first were the ones actually buried, hidden on the inside of the loop. This is really important for people when they're doing inspections of this equipment. The outside one actually broke at about 1,400, they started breaking, and then the whole thing failed at 1,500 where it separated these two loops and pulled them apart. What's interesting is with a daisy, even when loaded incorrectly, you do have a secondary catch point, although if you have a full load of 1,500 pounds, it's going to just keep tearing through all this, but it does have a secondary point where it connects. With the sewn runner, where we loaded it correctly, we pulled from this loop and pulled down, so we're basically treating these stitches like they're in shear. And what it did was break pretty much where we expected. It broke at about 4,900 pounds. So once again, this manufacturer called out a minimum breaking strength around 4,000 pounds, so 4,900 pounds seems in line. It's better to be above, obviously, than lower. If we saw something like 3,600 pounds, we'd be very concerned. But it is in line with what the manufacturer was expecting, and that's what we saw in the results. And that stitching started snapping at, I believe, around 4,600 pounds. We started hearing breaks. At about that 4,900 pounds, it was toast and opened up and popped into the next loop again. All right, so those tests were pretty interesting. I know it's something I've wanted to actually break apart for a couple years here. And what it teaches us is if we use these daisies incorrectly, which is very easy to do accidentally if you're not paying attention, we're going to reduce the capacity to about 30%. So we lose about 2/3 of the capacity of the daisy. This is an enormous amount. If you think about the safety factors of performer flying or suspending something temporarily in the air, that reduction is basically making this unsafe for us to use based on that initial math. So make sure when you're using these daisies, you really pay attention. Make sure when you're inspecting them, you make sure they're installed correctly, and look at those stitches, especially on the inside loop where those are going to break first.